represent those of WOAI and iHeartMedia.
Welcome. This is Sidebar. Sidebar, a frank discussion on life, the law, and liberty. Sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood.
Thank you so much for joining us on Saturday, every Saturday at 9 a.m. This is called Sidebar. And if you want to know a little bit more, you can go to sidebartv.com, because not only do we do the show on WOAI from 9 to 10, we continue the show afterwards on social media. So sidebartv.com. You can also become a sponsor of the show, a contributor, and that would really, really be a very cool thing for everybody here. So the craziness and the chaos continued this week, but one question that emerged for me, and I hope a lot of other people, is President Trump the world peacekeeper? And if that is a fact, then how did anybody anticipate that? Did anybody see that coming? Is this something that President Trump will be known for? Is that his legacy? Also, I guess we have to talk about Israel, updates on Israel and what's happening, what's the latest there. And really, I mean, is there a difference? Is there some sort of a wedge being driven between MAGA and the situation in Israel? And then I don't even know how to bring this into the situation. And does it matter to us? But did you get a chance to see the New York City mayoral primary and who won? Is that a shocker to everybody that this guy, is he a little bit of an extremist? He calls himself a Democrat, but I think he's a little bit more than that. If you have just now started listening, you will hear during this hour, if you're listening on the radio, former Bexar County District Attorney Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of the LaHood Norton Law Group, and George Araujo, scholar, former chemist, pharmaceutical researcher. Thank you for being here, you guys. Every week, we have so many great people that are listening and watching online, and they look so forward to this. Like, what kind of lives do they have that this is what they're looking forward to?
I don't know what's to listen to us schmucks here.
No,
weekend,
seriously. This is like affirmation of all of our beliefs.
Well, the people that dissent with our beliefs, I hope they do. We just want people to critically think through issues and not just be a bunch of sheep. You know, do you spar with ideas in your mind? And one of the ideas we're going to be talking about today is President Trump as a world peacemaker. Look,
wow.
I mean, how do you not, even if you, well, I guess there's a way to do it, but if you objectively look at President Trump and his maturation process, not only, I mean, look, you can still learn as you get older, even though he's in his late 70s. I'm going to keep learning until the Lord takes me off this earth. But he's matured so much into a public servant and a politician. He's completely different. I know people talk about President Trump 2.0 versus 1.0. I mean, inflation, tariffs, people were wrong about that. I'm waiting for people to admit, I mean, maybe the verdict's not in yet, but about the tariff situation, the stock market is insane. I mean, yeah. International respect, which international respect turns into international safety, if you really understand that dynamic. Peace, which is the kind of dovetailing with the first point I made. And then look, once this big, beautiful bill, whether it's beautiful or not, we can debate that, but once this bill is passed and the implementation of just some of these ideas, that's one of the arms of his strategy, of his campaign strategy. And then if you can get the Fed to lower the interest rate, I mean, can you imagine where he'd be if those two things had already happened? I know we're looking at July 4th, whether that's an arbitrary time or it's going to take longer than that or whatever, but it's going to happen, I'm assuming. I mean, I think people are pretty comfortable saying some version of that's gonna pass. I mean, Trump has just done amazing. I mean, he really has. I mean, I've been, I think, appropriately critical of him at times, objectively, not subjectively. But I can't speak highly enough about him. Again, you don't have to like his style, although his style is, have you noticed his demeanor? Mm-hmm. Much more calm, much more stoic.
Lets other people talk.
Not emotional. He's always given other people credit as long as he gets credit for giving them the opportunity. Right. But I mean, that's okay. That's his personality. That's fine. I've been very impressed with him. I think he's doing a very, very good job. And if this keeps up, I think the midterms are looking very well. And we'll talk about the New York Democrat primary. I don't think that's a reflection of the national sentiment. And I think you're seeing a kind of a nervousness in the Democrat Party because they don't want, at least the reasonable people, they don't want that to be the new standard moving forward for Democrats, and neither do we. I don't think any of us do.
Yeah, man. And you say that last point for last, huh? Is that a little bit of red meat or what?
Well, that's just.
No, I wonder. That is a curiosity. I don't know the answer to it, but I'm seeing what is probably alarming. That this isn't. What do you mean by national sentiment? So clearly Americans overall are not on board. I think you're right there. But I'm worried about what's going on in what was formerly the Democrat Party. I mean, a clear shift towards communism. And Democrat socialist, if you look at what he actually espouses, if you really look at it, it's decidedly closer to communism, and that's the concern here. And I think, Nico, is this a minority inside the Democrat Party? Because it certainly has the power. It seems to be the part of the party that seems to be shifting power. When you have Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin, who used to be somewhat rational earlier, the positions that they're taking on a whole host of issues that Americans are decidedly against, that align with the most radical wings of the party. I mean, the party seems to be clearly going in that direction. That's where the political power seems to be. Who's driving the narrative? Is it Chuck Schumer? Is Chuck Schumer driving the narrative of the Democrat Party? Is Dick Durbin driving the narrative of the Democrat Party? Is Hakeem Jeffries driving the narrative of the Democrat Party? You hear what? You hear AOC.
It's the younger.
You hear AOC. You hear
people.
the Squad.
Yeah.
And if you look at their ideals and their philosophy and their take on the American Constitution, it's a complete inversion of American. I was going to say American constitutional sentiment, but just American traditions, American norms. So that's where the political power seems to be. And I don't think that Zoran Mamdani, that his mayoral primary victory, Nico, I don't think it's a bug. I think it's a feature. And I worry about it. And as I say it, I hope I'm dead wrong.
Wait, what did you say, and what does that mean?
Well, what I mean is, go ahead.
Well, no, I want you to say what you mean, but I was listening to you, but you have to look at exit polling. Look at the percentage of people that actually voted. It wasn't that high. It's worse than San Antonio.
It was?
It was very low. And then if you look at how he did in black areas, he did very poor in black areas. He did okay in Hispanic areas. He did very well, I think George made this point, other people have too, in gentrified white neighborhoods where, these white liberal young people come in with their over-education, and then they overvalue an area, and then now you drive out the traditional people that have lived there, ethnic people. So, is this where what's left of the Democrat Party when the smoke settles? Are more Hispanics and blacks and maybe Asians? The Jewish people aren't going to vote for this dude. And so I get your concern, and I think it's legit. I think the Democrat operatives, quote unquote, and the people that are the thinkers of the Democrat Party are worried about it. Schumer's just trying to survive. The guy, he's just listening to him these days. When
he starts to chant.
He's lost himself.
Yeah.
If you look at the OG, he's completely lost himself. He's trying to hold on to power. He has no principles. He's really nauseating to me. But most of those people are, because they really don't believe in what they do. Because these private conversations happen. And Mark told me that up in Austin here. You have these private conversations, you have these public speeches. It's like, just whatever you are, just be what you are. And then we can, don't be a BSer. So I don't know, George. I understand the concern. I think the Democrat operatives have that same concern. SA, San Antonio, voted in a mayor that in line. I'm not saying that Mayor Jones is exactly like him.
You don't have to.
This guy is very left, and I don't think he's a reflection of the sentiment in the Democrat Party, although I know that's where it's leaning and where it's heading. I'm just curious what's left of the Democrat Party. We'll find out midterm.
I admit, I don't know how I would define the word sentiment in this context. That's why I'm kind of shifting towards power. In other words, what's driving results at the end of the day? I'm curious as to why 1 in 5 Jewish people voted for this man. When you look at the things that he's saying concerning the Jewish state and Israeli policy, his positions on that, this man is clearly 100% in the so-called Palestinian camp, and he refuses to divest himself of terms like intifada, which have specific meanings. And this is where things started becoming very concerning in a recent interview with The Bulwark, a podcast, where they asked him if he felt uncomfortable. They didn't even give him it wasn't even a tough question. I think he could at least use the word uncomfortable. It's sort of an American mushy word that means everything and nothing. He had nothing to lose, right? But they say, you uncomfortable with the global intifada? And he He refused to distance himself from that, and then actually turned the interview and almost an apologetic for the Intifada, which in context, there's been two major intifadas, the Arabic term meaning uprising or shaking off. And in a context in which it's been used, it's been decidedly violent. There were two intifadas, so-called uprisings of the Palestinians against Israel from 1987 to 1993, and again from 2000 to 2005. And both of those were rather violent. The second one was exceptionally violent, where thousands of Palestinians and over 1,200 Israelis died, and involved suicide bombings. The context of the Intifada is really violent, and it has at its goal the extermination, the elimination of the Jewish state. And for a person to say that and say all kinds of other crazy things, like if Benjamin Netanyahu was in New York, I'd have him arrested. I mean, this guy isn't being subtle about these things. And so I'm wondering why 1 in 5 Jewish persons voted for him. It's a general question, a genuine question I have, Nico. And I guess I would step back and say, why is it that from February until now, the man surged 30 points? I mean, he was at 1% in February.
But why is it?
Well, you have to look at his opponent.
Just questions I have.
Look at his opponent. I mean, Cuomo. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
was...
So it's like crappy and crappier. I mean, and Cuomo's no beacon of politics and Democrat politics even. Maybe he is. Who knows? But I mean, how many people are a Cuomo fan? So I mean, you have to think about your opponent also. I mean, everyone looks like a badass if they're fighting weak people. And so I don't know. I agree with you, but I think the bigger problem and that people need to start looking at, and we need to analyze, and we've analyzed on the show before, is the ideology of Islam. I mean, because that's what he's espousing. And people really have to, and as uncomfortable as the conversation as that is, I mean, the Hadith, the Sirah, the Quran, I mean, there's 3 books. There's an ideology, there's Sharia law that you have to look at. I mean, there's those are radical Islamists. No, there's militant Islamists. Islam is Islam. Whether you think it's radical or not, we can have that debate. But there's militant, and there's Islam is Islam, and you just have to talk about it. So that's the discussion I think that the church and politics has to have.
Okay, we are going to take a break right now. But remember, sidebartv.com. Stick with us. We'll be right back with more conversation on Sidebar.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today, 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI. Please go to sidebartv.com. Join us on social media platforms of your choice. And please consider becoming a contributor to Sidebar. Before the break, you know, I was thinking to myself, one of the reasons that I might not have voted the way New York City did is wasn't one of the platforms of this guy to just not defund the New York City police, but just to get rid of the police altogether. And I was thinking, wow, that would be a reason not to vote. But what you guys were talking about is a little bit deeper. And I guess the comparisons that you made and understanding the difference between communism and Islam, how does that even matter? Why does that matter?
Well, I mean, I just think people should educate themselves about Islam. George can speak more eloquently about the overlap of communism and Islam until there's no one left, and then Islam and communism go at each other because there can only be one person in charge. So if you understand Islam, I mean, it's an imperialistic mindset. I mean, there's one caliph under one caliphate. So there's one government under one leader. Now, I know there's Shiite and Sunni, and there's different struggles inside of Islam, and that's why the Middle East has the problems it has, and why Iran was the kind of the bully, and that's why a lot of these Arabian nations. Did you remember? I'm still waiting for that list, Karen, on all the Arabian nations that were rebuking what Israel was doing on Iran. Why? Why were they just eerily silent?
Totally.
It's because they understand the dynamic and the struggle between those countries under the same or similar ideology. I'm concerned about this push for Islam. Look at what's going on in Europe. I mean, I know friends that are Islamic. I represent people Islamic. This has nothing to do with a hatred for anything. I'm just trying to bring out the objective truths about any ideology. And I don't judge an ideology by its abuse or by its advocacy. I judge it by what it believes, its principles, its application. That's the key. People that criticize Christianity, they're usually not criticizing the behavior of Christ or the teachings and principles of Christianity. It's some bastardized view of it. And so I look at the actual sources, not its abuse. And so I've studied it in the past because when I was DA, there was a push, and there's a push again to set up Sharia courts, and to say, okay, there's going to be a circumvention of the Constitution, and Sharia is going to govern over Islamic culture, Islamic societies. And then, of course, to push that to be for everybody. And that's what's happening in the UK. You don't have to, I'm not making this up. Just study what's going on in the UK and the aggression of it and the ideology and the ideas of it. And so that's I think the discussion that we need to have politically, but also in the church. Now, I'll leave it at this because I really want to hear from George on the overlap of communism and Islam. But remember when Ben Carson years ago, when he was running for president, he said that a Muslim cannot be president, and he got so much backlash. He wasn't trying to be a bigot, or he wasn't trying to, because he understands the ethos of Islam. You can't pledge yourself to. I mean, I'm talking about someone that is a strict militant follower of Islam. You can't pledge yourself to the Constitution. I mean, there's the Quran, there's Hadith, and there's the Sirah, the autobiography of Muhammad. I mean, and the Hadiths are the traditions, and they have to be implemented under Sharia law. So it's not the constitutional law, it's Sharia law. I mean, just look at Yemen, look at Saudi Arabia, look at all these places that have Sharia. And then women are treated horribly, homosexuals are killed. I mean, that's not just hyperbole. You can do your own objective research. That's what he was talking about. It's because if someone under that ideology will not pledge themselves to protect and defend the Constitution, they can't. They have to replace it. I mean, in a perfect world, if you're talking about someone that is strictly going to follow that ideology. And of course, he's not a very good defender of himself and an articulate person, so he took a lot of backlash from it. But this is the discussion I believe we should have, because you're seeing in Texas, the epic city, and thank
Absolutely.
God the governor and the legislation, the legislators addressed that, but don't think it's going away. Think about that, an epic city where just an Islamic community is. I mean, and if you look at the plans, and George has talked about this on shows before, about taking over countries and cultures. I mean, look at the European countries,
Yeah.
and what Syria, not European, but there's a lot of countries that used to be Christian, used to be not Islamic, and now they got taken over by Islam. So it's just something that you have to look at and have an objective, non-emotional, non-name-calling discussion about ideas. That's it. Let's have a discussion about ideas and the consequences of those ideas. And so that's what I was thinking about when I saw New York vote for this guy, or at least that portion of New York that did.
Yeah, and so the overlap, though they have very clear historical roots, clearly different historical roots. I mean, the militancy at the heart of Islam and communist militancy clearly overlap. I mean, these are movements, these are ideologies that rest on the suppression of individual thought, and certainly the suppression of free speech. And they really coalesce power in the hands of a few, right? You obviously can see that in Iran with the coalescing of power for the last 46 years in the hand of a few mullahs, which is really a word that simply means religious scholar, religious cleric. And that's the difference, by the way, between imam and mullah. An imam is typically a leader of a local mosque, whereas a mullah is a religious scholar, someone actually trained in Islamic law. So the Ayatollah Khamenei is a mullah. All of that to say that at the center of these movements is an authoritarian and autocratic belief that is positioning of power in the hands of a few, and this is decidedly antithetical to American thought and American politics, the American Constitution itself. And so I think we should play that out. I mean, what happens when you have leaders who have at the core of their beliefs these views? And I know that there's the notion that, well, I mean, you can believe whatever you can believe religiously, but it's not going to affect your politics. That's just BS. It doesn't work that way. If you truly believe it, it's going to affect your politics. Politics, in essence, being a set of ideas that you bring people around to drive change. and whatever change you want to see. And so it becomes really a debate about politics. What are the politics of this man? Look at the things that he says. When he says that because he's a New York Assemblyman, when he says the New York Assembly is a bastion of Zionist thought, that's not a neutral statement. Those terms mean something. That's a hostile statement. When he says that he's not, that the plight of the Palestinians, for instance, is against the genocidal power. He's accusing Israel of genocide. That means something very specifically. It's wrong-headed, it's delusional, and it totally diminishes what Israel has been through at the hands of terrorists for the last several decades. I mean, and so when he makes these statements and he doesn't divest himself from globalize the Intifada, what's he saying? He's saying what does globalize the Intifada mean? It means bring that over there, bring that revolution, bring that violence over here. That's what that means. And so I'm concerned that the power is behind these lunatics. That's what I'm concerned about. And the exploitation of American law and American politics to basically inculcate these authoritarian thoughts. I think we're in deep trouble. And I don't think honestly this is the only thing. I mean, Karen Bass in LA, this is a devout communist. This is a person who has clear communist roots. How's she doing in LA right now? How's that working out? I mean, she has clear connections to the Fidel Castro movement in Cuba. She spent the 1970s, 1980s traveling over there. There's a movement for people to know, Nico. I mean, this has been going on forever. Left-wing Americans traveling over to communist countries to share in those ideals. They bring them back here and try to drive political change.
But to your point earlier, George, I mean, you've made this point numerous times. How does this fly? How is there a seasoning of the electorate to receive these ideas?
Who voted for this guy? Legitimate question.
But make your point. What do you always say? Where is this? This is in the educational system.
It truly is.
I mean, it's in academia because they're tenderized for this kind of stuff. They've been taught to hate America, hate capitalism, hate all this. I mean, this guy wants to start government-run convenience stores or supermarkets. I mean, his ideas are insane, and they're not going to work.
But even deeper than that, Sid on Facebook Live says, why are the Democrats, especially in New York, Manhattan, why are they sticking with being Democrat? It's the wealthy that live in Manhattan. They're still, she said she talked to one of her friends in Manhattan, and the biggest concern that she had after voting for this same guy was that he didn't have a lot of political experience, not any of the ideas that he had.
Well, look, campaigning is always easier than governing, right? I mean, anybody can campaign.
Yeah,
anybody
right.
can make a promise. But how do you implement those ideas that you said you were espousing, and then you govern? And you see that often. You see people that campaign really well, and they're great campaigners, but they're crappy governors.
And he campaigned very well.
Yes. I mean, look, I mean, he energizes people. Look, he's on to something. So this is something that either the Democrat Party, if they want to save their party, they got to get their leaders to quit buying in, to go along, to get along, and follow the AOC crowd. Bernie's already in. I mean, Schumer's sold his soul. And Pelosi, I don't know what she's doing. She's counting her millions. They don't know what they believe anymore, and they're trying to reestablish themselves as a leader. And then here's this energetic dude, and AOC energized, and the young people are being energized. They're thinking, oh, the young people. They're even trying to look for a Joe Rogan. I mean, they're really confused right now. So this is a wonderful opportunity for Trump and the Republicans and the conservative movement, if you really understand it, to establish, new people in the party, but. The Republican Party, as I've said often, they have to think about when Trump's not in office. He has 3.5 more years. What he's accomplished in 6 months, you can argue is miraculous. It's unbelievable, and I can't compliment him enough. I really and I will defend it. Trump has done a phenomenal job. He really, really has. And Rubio, you know how I feel about Rubio. And Vance, I like Vance a lot, and he's just got a great team around him, and so much more wisdom and a different demeanor and a different approach. And it's effective, and we're seeing the effectiveness of it. The market, inflation, NATO, they're gushing over this dude, calling him daddy. I mean, I call people papa and mama, a term of endearment. I've been doing that for years. But I didn't hear the context, but they joked about it. Rubio almost crapped his pants when he laughed when they asked that stupid question. But I mean, the NATO, they just, and he, look, whether you like it or not, Trump deserves it. He deserves it. He's doing a lot of good, not just speaking good. He's doing good. He's governing well. His ideas are actually playing out. That's why we all said in the show before, Let this stuff play out. Everybody's going to get emotional. The world's not ending. Yeah, okay, he's either going to be in history books as, man, one of the best presidents, or his legacy is going to be tarred. Right now, it's looking like the first one. So he still has a long way to go. There's a lot to happen. I'm curious about the big, beautiful bill, and what the implementation of that and how that's really going to affect things, George. But I got to give Trump a solid A. I mean it. I'll debate people on that if you want to. A solid A on his performance.
It's weird how these two topics. Yeah, of course. I do agree. Of course, I agree. I do agree with that. Absolutely a solid A on the merits. Not just ideologically, but on the merits and what he's managed to achieve. To your point, but it's interesting. We're talking about literally. Here's Trump, who couldn't be any farther away from communism in terms of priorities, and then you have this going on in New York City. A city that has the largest Jewish
city.
Yeah, right. That has the largest Jewish population in the world outside of Israel. And so this seems bizarre to me. And so there's a lot of overlaps. I mean, don't underestimate the overlaps between a Mamdani and a Trump. I mean, Mamdani came in and he basically he came in and leaped 30 points in a couple of months because he attacked the status quo. And he went after.
Talk about that.
That's right.
That's right.
He attacked
That's exactly right.
No, he's a complete empty suit. His ideas are completely moronic, and they'll bankrupt New York even more. I mean, the idea of free bus rides and freezing rents, and like you said, having government-run grocery stores. This is insane. Who's going to pay for that? This is all, and these are young people that are coming out for this guy. Truly, I mean, 50,000 volunteers.
That's outrageous.
Tons of door knocks. I mean, he mobilized the campaign. This guy campaigned very, very well. He flashes his pearly whites. That's an immediate contrast to a desiccated Andrew Cuomo. No question about it. But look at what he's saying. Now, his approach, you could say, man, there's a lot of overlaps with what Trump did. He came in and he went after the status quo, and he just upended all of it. But Trump's ideas are constructive. Right. This guy's ideas are completely destructive. And because young American boys and girls have been taught this nonsense as gospel in the American educational system, it actually seems cool. Like they listen to it and they're like, oh, that's what we've been taught. We resonate with this. And they adopt these faux virtues, of equality, which is, by the way, the argument that he's making for Palestinian violence. Well, I mean, there's just a movement seeking for a voice of equality in the Middle East. I mean, it's completely moronic. But we have got to step back and say, is this an isolated thing? I don't think it is. The question is it going to win the day eventually? Is this guy going to win in New York? I have my doubts because Mayor Adams and Andrew Cuomo are going to split the vote. They're running as independents.
Okay, we got to take a break. We got to take a break, but we will be right back with more on Sidebar.
San Antonio's news, weather, traffic, plus breaking news 24/7. This is News Radio 1200 WOAI from the GiveMeTheVin.com Sell Us Your Cars studio.
I'm Eric Lycom at News Radio 1200 WOAI. The Senate will take up the big, beautiful bill vote sometime today. Details coming up. First, traffic and weather together.
The WOAI Traffic Center.
35 southbound, the off-ramp towards Thousand Oaks is closed due to construction. Loop 1604 westbound, off-ramp to Kyle Steele Parkway is also closed for construction. I'm Alexis, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
Sneaking up on 91. We got mostly sunny, 79 now at the WOAI 24-hour weather center. Our top story. The Senate plans to vote on the one big, beautiful bill today in an effort to throw it back to House lawmakers before the July 4th deadline. Democrats say the bill will drive up the national debt and deprive millions of Americans of Medicare benefits. President Trump took a victory lap yesterday after a major ruling in his favor came down from the Supreme Court limiting the ability of federal judges to take action against his executive orders. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller tells Fox's Brett Baer that people like Chuck Schumer are cheering for district court tyranny.
Chuck Schumer wants to be able to install a single district court judge in a far left community to make decisions for the whole country. That is authoritarianism. That is fascism. That is not freedom. That is not American democracy.
News on demand at WOAI.com. Our next update, top of the hour, breaking information as it happens. I'm Eric Lycom on San Antonio's news, weather, and traffic station, News Radio 1200 1200 WOAI.
This report is sponsored by Discover. Guess what? Discover's accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard right, 99%. If you don't think so, maybe it's time to face facts. You're stuck in the past. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. Go to sidebartv.com to join us after the show, which happens in 30 minutes. So it's funny because remember a zillion years ago when Trump was coming down the escalator, did you ever think that they were going to be calling him the world peacemaker? The world peacemaker. You're already shaking your head, George. You said yes. What made you think that?
What's the first step to actually brokering any kind of arrangement that yields peace, Nico? I mean, telling the truth, it seems to me a good place to start.
And strength.
And say, exactly, and say what you want about Trump. I mean, he told the truth, and he identified things that were legitimate problems in the American economy, in American culture, American foreign policy, certainly American border management. Trump told the truth, and they were inconvenient truths. And he cut against the grain, and he resonated with a lot of Americans who were suffering at the hand of a very, sort of disaffectioned political class. And it worked for him. And he's been consistent. He's not backed off from any of that stuff. I mean, he's remained very, very consistent. Yeah. And then he's put together, after learning the hard way in Trump 1.0, he's put together a killer team. Trump would never be able to do what he's doing right now. As potent a force as he is, he'd never be able to do what he's doing right now. Marco Rubio is an absolute star. I mean, the guy truly walks between the raindrops, as far as I'm concerned. Nico's already said that he thinks he's the closest he's seen to a perfect politician right now, which is quite a statement coming from the hood here. But I mean, without a Marco Rubio, without a Scott Bessent, because these are two major fronts. I mean, you've got a Secretary of State, not just now as a temporary head of U.S. agencies, if you will, but also as the Secretary of State, the nation's chief diplomat. The inroads that Trump is making, I mean, I almost wonder if you don't have a good cop, bad cop. But I mean, that Rubio's no marshmallow. I mean, that guy is. I mean, he launches tough, fact-based, inconvenient truths. I mean, you watch him in any given program. He's very effective and internationally true to form. And then of course economically. I mean, Scott Bessent has been a very articulate, very educated, decisive. And he gets things done. The guy's tireless as well. So I love to see the journey from those initial promises to Trump remaining consistent, to weathering, of course, this horrific 4-year period of lawfare, to prevailing in the 24 election, and now to actually implementing. And finally, Nico, coming through this dust cloud of lawfare that's continued into this administration with some very appropriate and really sort of timely Supreme Court wins.
Wow. Yeah.
So what a story, right? What a story. And this is now going international, I hope. It seems to be infectious. People want to align themselves with a winner. Trump doesn't just say stuff. He does stuff. And it seems to be effective. And I think people are aligning behind a winner.
I mean, it all started last year in Butler. When his response to that attempted assassination and blood in his, I mean, it all started there. I mean, that you could sense it, you could feel it. It was palpable, the shift. I was in church when it happened. I saw all the dings are going off on your phone. And I thought to myself, and I'm not just saying, I said it back then, you heard me. I mean, I said it back then, I said, oh crap, Trump's going to win. I just knew it. I mean, it was very different. I mean, people, it's just this respect. You want that in a leader. How can you, look, diplomacy is wonderful, but diplomacy only works if you have something to back it up. You have to have a rabbit can't be a diplomat because a rabbit's a rabbit. A lion can be a diplomat, a silverback gorilla can be a diplomat, but a rabbit can't. And so people saw Trump differently at the time. I mean, look what Congo and Rwanda, Gaza and Israel, we're going to discuss that here in a little while, I'm sure. Iran and Israel and his response, Pakistan and India. I mean, yeah, Ukraine and Russia, he said it's going to be done before I take office first day. I get it. There was some factors he wasn't obviously considering at the time because he wasn't in that role. But you got it. And then the way people are dealing with us, the whole tariff gamble, it appears, we're not there yet. Verdict's not fully in. It appears to be working. I mean, and so Trump, him using his strength, peace through strength, he's really exhibiting that. And I think it's very effective People take him very serious. This Iran very limited strike, and we'll talk about his authority to do that, which he was acting under presidential authority, in my opinion, and others. But that you don't think that would send a message around the world to everybody else? I meant to show that America is back, that America's not worried about having cross-dress, competitions and gender questions in the military and pushing Pride Month, which you really didn't hear much about it this month. I mean, you didn't hear about that. You heard about a war-fighting machine, Hegseth, for all his stumbles at the beginning. I think it was just kind of growing pains of being in a position he'd never been in before. I mean, he's bringing that ethos back to the military, the pride in our military that makes us unique. Nobody could have pulled off that. Look, I mean, but he's using his power not to be a bully, as opposed to what anybody wants to say. He's not, because he's open to discussion. He's open to listening. He's open to audibles. He changes his opinion and mind all the time, to people's criticism too, because he wants to do what he feels is right. He's just using a different approach. So I think he's going to be, if this keeps up, will be known as that legacy he wanted, to be a peacemaker. And
I love it. Equal measures of carrot and stick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a Trump doctrine, and he's not afraid to use either at the appropriate time. But he really focuses on the economic benefits. I love that. That's really at the crux of the Abraham Accords. He's really trying to broaden that coalition. It's a handful of countries right now. Arrangements primarily based on economics between Israel and a few other Arab countries. And he's trying to bring Saudi Arabia into the fold and a number of others. And I think he's going to be successful in doing that. But why is that? I mean, I think everybody wants to win a winner, and everybody wants to win. I mean, that's just sort of nobody. Do you really want to be in perpetual bloodshed? That is not the sentiment of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so you have obviously theological and historical differences there that are not going to resolve, if you will. But there's a lot of shared interests, and Trump is doing a very good job selling that. He's saying, hey, you guys, there's a lot more common ground here between all of you than you're giving credit. And he's made that case. The Abraham Accord signature in 2020 was the beginning. I love what's happening. I really do, because what's happening is you're isolating the crazies. Iran is completely isolated right now.
Yeah.
And their proxies go from non-existent to complete just bastions of embarrassment and foolishness right now. So he's increasing isolating those, and he's inviting people to a big umbrella of prosperity. And I love that he's not just making the argument, but I mean, they know. I mean, when you drop 30,000-pound bombs strategically, not just where they hit, but the timing, and to know that he's able to plan that on the sides, and at the same time talking diplomacy. I mean, you take a person like that seriously. Maybe in about 2 weeks, and then it's actually 2 days. Because Iran was recalcitrant, they were persisting on their path to nuclearize, and to know that this guy's not afraid to do that at any given time. I mean, that puts fear in the heart of his enemies, and that's good for America. But he doesn't start with that, does he? I mean, it led up to that. It's incremental. He shows restraint. So Trump. The daddy thing is interesting. I thought of you because it is a term of endearment. But Mark Rutt was saying you've got these belligerent kids that have been fighting forever. It's actually more serious than that, but we'll take the analogy. Mark Rutt, the head of NATO. You've got these belligerent kids that have been fighting, and daddy had to step in. He had to step in. That's the context.
Yeah.
So it's both of a term.
It was an analogy.
So
Think about that. That's
Analogy.
the carrot and stick. It's a term of endearment, but it also carries decisive authority, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the daddy in my home did. I mean, I carry that authority in my home. Nico does too. But it's not to crush.
No.
That's not where you start, And so I love that word, and I love how it was used all week.
Well, I mean,
because there's a lot in it.
Salo just sent me a message. So just for the after show, we won't talk about it right now, but I think it's important, and I knew it was going to stir some people up. I mean, but we have to talk about it. Antonio, please stay on the after show. We're not going to take up any more radio time talking about Islam, because, I mean, you can't be so, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, shallow in your advocacy by just throwing out Islamophobia. So you criticize something in LGBT, you're homophobic, but it's never a two-way street. If someone criticizes Christianity, I've never heard of a Christian phobe. I've never heard of a Jesus phobia. I've never heard of conservative phobia. I've never heard of anything, Republicophobia, whatever it is. It's always a one-way, kind of piñata show. And that's just, and with all due respect, I think that's just to bring good arguments. Let's talk about ideas, the implementation of those ideas, your ethos, your idea, and how that blesses the most people, even people that disagree with you. That's my analysis. I want my ideas to bless people that even disagree with me as a whole, and whether they know it or not. And I'm open for that too. So after the show, Antonio Ortega, please stay on. And I'll try to look at comments, or maybe Saulo can bring me a screen so I can follow them, because I don't have anything in front of me. And we can have a friendly, hopefully professional and respectful debate about that issue. But yeah, I knew that was coming, but that's just, that you can't start there.
Well, now that you had the sidebar, I'm going to have another little sidebar. And that
more
is,
sidebar. It is the show, by the way.
Yes,
Sidebar.
it is. So the fake news that continues to say, they didn't do anything to Iran, or, they're still with their trying to knock the president down, or still saying he's not successful. And then there's talk about, President Trump will never get the Nobel Peace Prize. When does this end? I know that this is only 6 months into his presidency, but they're still trying to just break down any good that he's trying to do.
I mean, I don't mind if it doesn't end. I mean, it ends when they're neutered. Because it just shows how unreasonable and unhinged they are. And I think what it'll do is take the reasonable people that maybe aren't all in, but they're definitely not all in for deception and resistance. If your plan is the resistance movement just for the sake of resisting, and Trump sucks, but what are you going to do for me? I'm going to call Trump and tell him that he sucks. Well, how are you going to better my position? How are you going to better my neighbor? How are you going to better the person that I'm debating? How are you going to better our country? How are you going to protect us? And I don't mind it. I think it's going to wake more people up. I think the people that are really in the know of the party, Democrat side, are worried about that kind of thing. But it just discredits people. And I'm still not all in for great. Jake Tapper's one of the good guys now. He's not. He's an opportunist. And I think Jake the shift and the timing of the shift, it was very opportunistic, in my humble opinion. I'm not saying he's not repentive. That's between him and God, and whatever. And his genuineness is, I can't gauge that. But it's just his opportunistic shift is questionable for me.
George, don't you dare start on some long thing. You have 15 seconds. But you gotta
what
go.
he said.
Yeah.
Can't do that to George.
Seriously.
No, I'll start this next block, George.
No, it's a legitimate question. What is it that was executed this week that wasn't successful? By what objective measure would you make that assessment that if it wasn't successful? It's a legitimate question. Does anyone want to answer? Online? It's an open question. I'm curious.
Okay.
I have my answer.
Okay.
We'll save it.
We're going to take a break right now, but we will be right back. You got to stick with us. This is, these guys put forth topics I think that I don't hear anywhere else, and that's why I love it. And we want you to stick with us. This is Sidebar.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today, 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI, this is Sidebar. Now is the time to go to sidebartv.com because we will continue the show at 10 a.m. Jesse made a comment online, and I want to maybe be able to have some comments from you guys. He's talking about Jerome Powell, and when is this guy going to be out of here, and what's going to happen?
Well, I mean, if George can speak to that. He just told us off on break exactly kind of Trump's approach.
Just told us off?
Told us off. Off break. Told us off.
Just told us off.
Just told us off. No, but because we got to talk about the Israel issue in the Republican Party. So, George, if you can kind of, I don't know if you want to talk about on the after show about
real quickly. I
Powell or
I didn't
what?
know if you wanted to take that puppy, but I can do that because I think it is, I try to reserve the adjective brilliant for when it actually mattered. This is appropriate. It was a brilliant move by Trump. Jerome Powell has been a boil on his ass, and I think unnecessarily and absurdly. I mean, even as he's admitting, as are the other Fed governors, and there's dissent inside the Fed right now because of this, even as Jerome Powell is admitting that tariff policy has not shown any demonstrable effect on inflation. And even though it did not in Trump 1.0, there is literally no evidence whatsoever that there's inflationary pressures from tariffs. Jerome Powell said he's concerned about it. And so therefore, he is not going to lower interest rates or push for the lowering because he's concerned. Never mind the objective data. And we've had recurring month by month by month where inflationary activity has remained flat or has lowered. Inflation is lowering. Inflation, Nico, is the rate at which prices increase. And so what we're seeing is a slowing down in that rate. And so a lot of people, including my wife, will say, I don't understand. My groceries are still expensive. I'm like, honey, it takes time.
Yeah,
because this is a slowing down in the rate of increase. So now the increase is slowing down. It's still increasing. It's called inflation. But that rate is slowing, much slower. And so that's really good news. And Powell has been dismissing that. Now, Trump's fed up with Powell. The President of the United States gets to select the Fed chair. That's coming up, Nico, as you mentioned, in 11 months, because Powell's term is going to end. Typically, presidents don't announce that until about 2 or 3 months before the end of that term.
Okay.
What Trump says is he would very likely announce his replacement as early as August or September of this year.
It's a big move.
And what that will do is that this person's name will now be entered. He'll be really in the running. Everybody knows that he's going to be announced. And so he's going to start influencing how the markets look at economics, national economics. He's going to start influencing by starting to drop hints about his view
what he
on
would
interest.
do.
That is correct. And that's the future.
Yeah, got
and
it.
so you know what's going to happen. So a lot of the stock market is forward looking. And so they're going to be, so what Trump is saying is fine, do it your way. I'm going to do it my way. And I think that's brilliant to do that. Because it's not just a power play. It really works in Americans' favor because what Powell's doing is political. It's not economic.
Yeah, it's a brilliant move.
It is, and it's crazy that he keeps coming up with these. Remember what he said? Everybody's going to get sick of winning. I'm not sick yet. I'm totally not sick. But there is that little wedge that has been drawn, or I guess put between the MAGA people and Israel. And I still kind of need an explanation for that. Netanyahu, sometimes you think he's with Trump, and then other times you're like, what the heck are you doing? I mean, is there an explanation for that?
Well, look, we did an R-rated discussion about it. It got more into the theological side of it, and we're not going to finish this conversation in 10 minutes, but I think it's important to start it on the radio portion. Look, with Israel, I think it's similar to Trump. I think that there's people that have Israel derangement syndrome. I think there's people that have Israel euphoria, that Israel does no wrong, and we have to support everything they do, and it's biblical, and those who bless, Genesis 12:3, Senator Cruz, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel will be. I mean, there's those, and then there's the Israel realist. I'm in the third camp, the Israel realist. Israel is a strong ally for the U.S. They just are. Now, you can argue about how much money we send them and what we've built up or whatever, but they are surrounded, at least previously, by a sea of hate. I mean, just look at 1948 when they first got established. The next day, within 24 hours, they're attacked by 5 nations. You look at the history of Israel and the wars that they have had to defend and fight, whether they initiated them, and there's an argument for all that stuff. I don't think the objective evidence in the record substantiates that. But Israel has taken over, rightfully after war, that there's consequences to war, much more land. Egypt, Jordan, I mean, just from a lot. And they've given it back, including the Gaza Strip. They've given it back in peace deals that haven't been upheld. So Israel, I mean, I haven't looked at the map in a while, so George can correct me, should at least be 3 times its size by now. If you look at the history, I mean, the land that they have taken and given back in negotiations are close to it. And they haven't. So they're not trying to take over the region. They're no bigger than Jersey. We all know that. And they're not, I mean, there's more Arabs in that area than before, so they're terrible at genocide. But I think there's an argument that they've been irresponsible in some of their behavior. I think there's an argument that there's been an overreaction, whether you can substantiate or not, we can dissect all that. but there's this deep-seated, hatred for Israel by some people, and I'm sitting back watching. I'm fascinated by the discussion of the people that have the euphoric idea of Israel, that they can't do anything wrong and we support everything they do, and these people that they do everything wrong and all the worldly ills are because of Israel, including killing JFK. I mean, I've heard all the conspiracy theorists out there, and you just I don't care how crazy the theory is, because this is my world. I don't care how crazy the defense is or how crazy the theory of prosecution is. When I was DA, is as long as the evidence gets us there, then it's a crazy idea that I can back up in court with evidence. So I'm going to follow the truth wherever it leads me, and I'm going to ground myself in truth, and then I'm going to conform to it and advocate it. And I think there's a practical side to Israel. I think there's intelligence failures on October 7th. I get all that. George and I have talked about that. I have strong questions about that. And even if there's a lot there, I mean, we're not going to dissect it right now in the 8 minutes we have left, Karen.
Sure.
But it's a real issue on the conservative side, and it's a fascinating issue, but it's not a new one. I just think now we're talking about it more. It's spreading more because you're seeing videos. So
I think it's an outlet. I think it's a
outlier. You mean, like, meaning it's not a main issue?
I meant it's an outlet for foolishness, in my view, and the foolishness that has been taught in the American educational system. I don't separate anti-Americanism from anti-Israelism, not at the philosophical level, because Israel is for political purposes. Never mind the theological stuff, which is there's a legitimate argument to be made, and I would happen to align with the argument that there's obviously our Judeo-Christian roots, obviously Judeo, much is shared with Israel theologically. So the theological history of America and obviously the theological roots of Israel are they're obviously enmeshed. And I think those issues tend to muddy or clarify the political issue. Setting the theological aside, go to R-Rated and check out what we did there. Politically, young Americans are taught to hate America. They're taught that America is actually the opposite of what America was founded to be, which is not true. And so Israel is simply a Western outpost of America. Yeah. They are America in the Middle East. In terms of their priorities, they're not a constitutional republic, but they are a parliamentary democracy. And so there is a voice for the non-ethnic Jew in Israel. And the governmental system enshrines it. And we've said it probably ad nauseum, Nico. If you look at modern Israel, it's not as it was in Old Testament Israel. It's not ethnically pure.
Right.
It is truly a melting pot. And I rattled off a couple that just came to mind. I mean, you've got Christians, you've got Muslims, and you have Israelis, and you have, geographically, you have Ukrainians, you got Russians, you got people of all kinds of nationalities inside Israel. And if you look at the Knesset, the Jewish parliament, it's not monolithic. It's not a bunch of ethnic Israelis, right? You have Arabs there. And so from that standpoint, and look at what Israel has managed to build. It's an orderly society. They produce things. They're prosperous as a people. And so if you look at the Middle East and you see Israel ensconced in a sea of chaos, it is a Western outpost of American thought in terms of priorities, freedom and prosperity for its people. Now, does that sound like someone who is saying that Israel is perfect? Because if it does, you're wrong. I'm not saying any of that. Israel has flaws. We have flaws. Every nation has flaws. Israel is far from perfect. But in terms of its priorities, in terms of its governance, it is a Western outpost. It is an outpost of American thought, in my view. And so it's very difficult for you to graduate from an American university hating America and having this deep love for Israel. I don't think that's going to fly. So I think at the root level, that's where we got to go. And then we can talk about some of the other particulars to see, whether there's any evidence, whether there's any data, whether there's any news, in fact, to substantiate what I think is an irrational fervor. And I would argue, no, there isn't.
But I mean, arguably, some people are very it's hard for me to stomach Candace Owens now these days, at least on this issue. And it disappoints me to say that, because I was a big fan, not fan, but a supporter of Candace Owens. I mean, she she's educated. She's very talented. She's an intelligent woman. We all have blind spots. All of us do. And she was a force for good in combating and advocating against woke ideology, progressive ideology, and all that stuff back then. When she gets to this issue, she just doesn't want to listen. I mean, she's not open. She's too far in. I mean, it's almost like Macron's wife. She ain't changing her opinion. I mean, whether it's a dude or not, and people agree she sits like an old dude. I mean, that's fine. But she was on that train. I mean, she's still far in on this thing. I don't think she's going to course correct. I mean, everyone was talking about, including her and Tucker, that this Iranian strike, if we did it, was going to lead to World War III. I haven't seen any retractions. Dave Smith. I haven't seen these people say, hey, I was wrong. I mean, Dave Smith advocating to impeach Trump over the Iran. And of course, it goes back to Israel. Ask Bibi what you're going to do. She says Trump's not running the country. Bibi is. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm no Bibi apologist. I mean, the dude is wrapped in flesh, and I'm not a fan or not a fan of him. I'm just an objective observer. And George and I have had very healthy discussions on Israel and Bibi and all that stuff offline. But Candace and even Tucker on this issue.
I was so surprised.
And then you get people coming up with videos saying, they have money tied to them. So what they're I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm open to seeing all the evidence. I'm open to following it wherever it leads us. But it's not productive. I think that you can easily objectively tie American interest and Israeli interest in Iran not having a nuclear weapon. This wasn't the one I thought to dig your heels in. And then to call for impeachment. I mean, that was insane. Dave Smith. I mean, these people. I mean, and I like Dave Smith overall. I think he's a thought provoker, and he's an articulate man, and he makes you think, and he pushes back, and I like all those things about him. But I mean, when you talk for impeachment over this, like, dude, man, what happened? And then Tucker and Tucker, the Ted Cruz thing. I mean, Ted Cruz could have done so much better on that interview, but Tucker was trying to do a bunch of gotchas. That was weird. It's entertaining because obviously everybody's talking about it, but it was weird. And then Candace is just, I don't know, she gets a little nauseating to me at the time. So look, we're gonna finish these discussions up. Antonio Ortega, I hope you're gonna follow us. I mean, stay on the after show. We'll talk about Islamophobia and just objectively talk about that. Any other questions you have, we'll try to monitor them. Thank you for joining us this weekend. Please share this with someone you think may benefit from it. Have a very blessed and wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
The preceding show was paid for by the LaHood Norton Law Group. The views and opinions expressed are those of the
on, but where are we going to start? Seriously, where are we going to start? Okay.
Wherever you want to start. I'm live. You want to talk?
Well,
is Antonio still on? Ortega? Please. Hello. Check. Mic check.
Hello.
Good. So wherever you guys want to start, I mean, we can finish off some of these conversations. We can talk about Israel. We can talk about Iran. We can talk about Gaza. We can talk about.
I
wanted to talk about the Supreme Court cases, but
I want to talk about that too because I felt like those were more wins for the president.
They were. They were. The main one was on the universal.
And for parents, right?
They were big. They were big wins, you know. And I just like the. Someone called it a bench slap instead of a bitch slap between Justice Barrett and Justice Jackson. That was interesting stuff. I mean, she was being bold as shit. Barrett, which is not typical of her.
No,
wherever
it
you
is
want to
not.
start. Wherever you want to start. You want to start with Islamophobia? You want to start wherever you want, Karen, or wherever the audience wants to start. I don't care.
George,
Why don't we
pick.
talk about that since that was
Yes.
part of what we were talking about on radio? Just put a capstone on it.
Okay, fine. So which one? Islamophobia?
Yeah.
Well, so Antonio, thank you for your comment. I'm glad you're listening in, especially if you disagree with some of our ideology. But we're really just trying to think through these issues, and we just have to talk about the ideas of militant of Islam. Period. Islam. You're either going to be militant about it, and in my research, and I've done a lot of research on it. And forget about me. There's other scholars on this, and we can just talk objectively about the ideas under Islam. There's 3 books in Islam. There's the Quran that makes up about 14 to 15% of the ideology of the religion. There's the Hadiths, which are the traditions of Islam, and there's more than one. And that's how you're supposed to live. Sharia law would be in that. And then the Sirah is the autobiography of Muhammad. And we know more about Muhammad than we know about George Washington and many of our presidents because he was illiterate, but he had scribes walking around writing about him.
Yeah.
We know how he did foreplay. We know how he had sex. We know how he took a shit. We know we know stuff you don't want to know about people. We know about Muhammad under the Sirah. And so in Sharia law, you have to study that because that is what an Islamic advocate or apologist is advocating Sharia in a community. Just look at the UK. I mean, it's just not hard to look at the ideas of Islam. I mean, Islamic ideology can be violent. It's dominating. It squelches freedoms. I mean, just look how they treat women, and I mean, you look in Iran. I mean, they hang women for not, for showing more than their eyes. I mean, how is that liberating to women? I mean, if you're a women's right advocate, if you're LGBTQ advocate, how is that? I mean, you can be killed for that. I mean, look, the Christian will try to persuade you that God has a different plan to you. The militant, the person that's going to follow it, they have the right to kill you for it, or to put violence on you. When we prosecuted a case that there's mercy killings that are justified. Nobody follows that. Okay, fine. Then say that you're changing. Say that you're trying to reform. But I'm just studying the text. I'm studying the ideology. And we prosecuted a case where, before I left office, where a family, this little girl ran away because the evidence showed that they had an arranged marriage and she didn't want to be married off. And the dad was pissed off and he had this scalding hot water and burned her. I mean, and she, come back, Nuda, come back, and all this other bullshit show. I mean, it was bullshit. I mean, and they were prosecuted ultimately because that's aggravated assault. I mean, against your child. I mean, it's terrible. But there's an ideology that Antonio, you just have to look at facts. And let's just look at facts. Let's look at ideas. If someone says, hey, you Christians, you have shitty ideas. Okay, well, which idea? And then they usually describe a shitty Christian, not the ideas of Christianity.
Right.
I never judge an ideology by its abuse. I judge it by its ideals. So don't judge Christianity by its abuse, by some bullshit pastor or some crazy movement that they claimed Christianity, but they weren't espousing the ethos or principles of Christianity. I'm looking at the ideas of Islam. And then when this first came up, we all say, oh, we all know someone who's Islamic, and I do too, and I love my friends that are like that or people that I know, but it's usually some morphed non-militant way of doing it. When you go, I go to Yemen, and I don't go there, but I look at Yemen, I look at Saudi Arabia, you look at these countries that implement the theocracy. That's what it is. Yeah, look, I think there's issues with it. I just think that you're going to have issues with it. I think if most people understand it, then they'll have questions, and there either needs to be a reform or not. I mean, the United States was not built off of Islamic ideology. It wasn't. Or not Hindu, not Buddhist. It was built off Judeo-Christian ideology. It was. That's just a fact. We can debate this until the cows come home, and you're going to look at objective truth. And our founding fathers believe that. Now, they didn't force it on you. I understand the Establishment Clause. I understand all that. But there are still ideas. Some set of ideas had to set up the civic government, and they were primarily Judeo-Christian ideas. And we know that because we just have to read the Constitution and think about these rights endowed by a creator, and it wasn't Muhammad. It's Yahweh. So all that to say is Antonio, tell me how my idea, I was saying about Islam, I wasn't being mean. I wasn't calling names. Is Islamophobic? I mean, because a phobia to me, Karen, is an unreasonable fear of something. So if Saulo goes, Nico, look at that spider in that corner way behind you, Karen. That's some big old tarantula. And I draw my weapon, duck, Karen, pop, 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 and I shoot this stupid ass spider 20 feet from me. That would be an unreasonable fear of spiders. That's ridiculous. That's a phobia. I'm overreacting. There's not an unreasonable fear of anything. I think I have appropriate concerns for ideas, and we all should. And you can have appropriate concerns for Christian or conservative ideas, but then let's debate the truth and then see what really
and people may ask, and what an important intro, and I think it sheds light on a lot of things. And people may be wondering, how come this isn't a concern about Christianity? Because at the center of Christianity, Old or New Testament, is love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Do good to those that persecute you. That seems like a really great way to live life, and so that's enshrined in our Constitution. And it guides the philosophy behind the Declaration of Independence. So the country's been built on that. Now, it's a legitimate question to ask of Zohran Mamdani, because the context or the comments of Islamophobia were made in that context.
Yeah.
And so Zohran Mamdani is a Ugandan-born Shia Muslim. So the two main drivers, the two main schools of thought in Islam are Sunni and Shia. Right. Sunni is overwhelmingly... seems to me the overwhelming number of Muslims are Sunni, to the tune of 85%, and I think Shia Islam is 15%. Please check me out on that, but I think that's about right. So it's legitimate to say what drives their thinking, and Sharia is not optional. Sharia is Islamic law. It's the religious legal system that's supposed to govern the political, the social, and the moral duties of faithful Muslims. It's not optional. And so the Quran says it's not optional. You don't have a right to decide for yourself what Allah has already decided on.
That's right.
I think that's chapter 33 or Surah 33, 36. It's a prescription, a mandatory prescription for believers. Surah chapter 5, verse 48. And so it's legitimate to say, okay, well, let's look at Sharia. And how would Zohran Mamdani then address X, Y, and Z from that prism? Because he hasn't divested himself of Islam. He's a professing Muslim. It's a legitimate question. So if Sharia Islamic law, it cuts through the heart of Islam, at least doctrinally. And it's not optional for Muslims.
No.
It's legitimate to say, what does Sharia consist of? And perhaps the most authoritative book out there. I have it. It's not easy reading, but then I don't think anything in the Quranic books or the Hadith is easy reading. There's two authoritative Hadiths. There's thousands of Hadiths, thousands of traditions, but there's two authoritative ones: the Sahih al-Muslim and the Sahih al-Bukhari, and those are very difficult to read. I mean, despite the translation, tough reading. Quran is tough reading. It's not thematic. It's sort of all over the place. Not easy reading, not easy to make sense of. The book on Sharia out there is The Reliance of the Traveler, and that's Traveler with two L's, Traveller. You can get that on Amazon. It's written by Nuhamim Keller, and it breaks down Sharia by category. What do we do about the rights of women? What do we do concerning marriage? What do we do concerning homosexuality? What do we do concerning slavery? All of those things are broken down in alphabetical system, A, B, C, D, E, and so forth. And you can read it for yourself. And so please read it. And then, Antonio, come back to the show, because we talk about Islam all the time. Please come back right into the show. And on those issues, on the rights of women, on marriage, certainly on homosexuality or minorities, sexual minorities, on the issue of slavery, on the issue of the treatment of what's called the caliph.
Well, explain what that is.
Well, the caliph is any non-Muslim.
Yeah.
Really. And so how does
the caliph different than a kafir?
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting
Yeah, okay.
me. The kafir. Thank you.
It's okay.
So how does, in fact, Islam say one should treat as a Muslim the kafir, any non-Muslim? Exactly how. Read it, and then come back on those issues and say, Nico, these are great ideals. I think I'd like to see that instituted in the United States. If you would, then let's talk about that.
I can't
But
wait
I'm
to
willing
read
to
it.
guess. I'm willing to guess that you're like, holy crap. Maybe it's a good idea to ask. That's all we're doing here. We're asking.
That's right.
And comparing and contrasting it and pushing back accordingly.
Yeah, but the urge to right away name call. I mean, because and Christians and conservatives don't do it back. I mean, whether they should or shouldn't. I don't look.
No.
If a name describes overall someone's behavior, that's different. It's a summation of something. But I want to debate ideas, and I'm open to being wrong, man. I will adjust. I promise you. My ideology, my faith is truth sets you free, right? John 8:31. We talk about biblical truth. That's what Jesus was talking about. But truth in general, Jesus says in John 14:6 that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father but through me. So truth is a character. Jesus can't lie. So I want to follow truth because I know Christ wants me to follow truth, even if it's uncomfortable for me. So I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to be obedient.
Truthful.
That's it. Yeah, and I want to conform to the truth, and then I will ultimately champion the truth. And I've changed my opinions over the years when I get more evidence. And so I'm an evidence-driven dude. And so that's it. So that's all, Antonio. I mean, I appreciate your comments, but I would stop the name calling and just. I don't know if he's made any comments or he's on or not. Maybe somebody can tag him and he can listen to this portion since we have.
But it is designed to shut down the argument
before
it even starts.
When you call someone a racist,
when you put phobia at the end, you realize what you're saying. You're saying that we're paranoid delusional, and what paranoid delusional person is worth listening to? I mean, that's what you're saying. It's not irrational. It's not paranoid. It's not delusional. There's a rational basis for what we're arguing. So.
I love what Sid has to say here. She says, here's something I don't get at all. Why is there, with all of this talk about Islamophobia, Sharia law, why is there such a backlash then about putting the 10 Commandments in school? That's so perfect.
Well, say that one more time.
Now there's all this backlash and fighting and probably lawsuits and no one... Because didn't Governor Abbott just sign a bill that says that they're going to put the 10 Commandments in schools?
Yeah,
and now
the state
everybody's
of Louisiana
like,
did the same thing.
you cannot do that. That's religious.
So
and
it's what we're talking about, isn't it?
I know.
It's not that the 10 Commandments is just theological, but it's historical.
But the freedom of religion is not the freedom from. I mean, so you're going to look. You just have to identify the ideology that helps shape this country and our Constitution.
That's it.
And that's it.
It's historically
That's all you're
relevant
doing.
to the founding of the country.
You don't have to follow it. But when you look at the 10 Commandments and you look at our penal code and our judicial system, pretty influential. I mean, thou shalt not murder. I mean, don't steal, don't covet, because every murder or stealing or fraud deals with coveting something that you don't have a right to.
I mean, it's really just
anything.
what Sid said. It's not like religious. These are like rules to live by. I mean, if you want to simplify it.
It's the 10 Commandments and the Sermon on the Mount. Exodus 23 through 17, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 3 to 7, 27. It was a very long sermon. But you're right. That basically provides the philosophical bedrock, the ideological bedrock to what is now common law in the United States. And so at the end of the day, it comes down to this, doesn't it? What do you want your country to look like? You got to go down to what you believe. And so then look at the Middle East. That's a good, useful comparison, isn't it? Look at the Middle East.
We have evidence.
I mean,
we have evidence.
We know what they believe. We know what they've believed since Muhammad. Right?
Look at Iran. Look at Iran pre-79.
It's painful.
I mean, when the mullahs came in, Ayatollah came in versus
Yeah.
the Shah. And I'm not being an apologist for the Shah. I mean, he said people send videos of him and like he was some beacon of whatever. No, but just look at, I love the video that Patrick Bet-David sent around, Salo, where, you look at Frank Sinatra giving a concert in 1975 in Iran. And the women, they look, you can tell they're Iranian women. They're ethnically, you can just tell. Like a Hispanic versus a European woman, but they're dressed appropriate for the times. There's a freedom.
Yes.
Women were educated. They were thriving. They were expanding. Now look at it. They were chanting about how industrial Iran was and how they were progressing. And now it's death to everybody else. And the kids are being taught to hate. Ideas have consequences. So
everybody else.
Well, it's the truth. So you just have this before and after. Which one do you want? And what made it change? And what ideas implemented changed Iran? It's a valid question that needs answering. And do you want those ideas implemented here? And if you don't think it can happen, don't look too far. I mean, there's a lot of nations that had Judeo-Christian ideology. They were overtaken by Islam, and they're the countries they are now. So, just a legit question that needs to be had. No one has to get over defensive about it. No one has to name call. Let's just talk. Let's talk and see, and then look at evidence when these ideas have been implemented. I mean, just like everyone talks shit about Trump, and then now he's 6 months into his presidency. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think objectively his ideas are working out. I was critical of him. Everyone knows that. I mean, even people that listen to us and love conservative. Like, Nico, come on, why are you so hard on him? I'm just trying to be objective. I don't drink the Kool-Aid for anybody but Christ. But everyone else, trust but verify, as they said. And yes, I'm glad. And that's why George and I got in our discussion. I don't trust any agency under Trump. Not because it's him, because of the apparatus. I don't trust the government.
And certainly not by default. You don't trust any. I mean, I don't know that I trust anything by default except God's word, and my wife and perhaps you. But I mean,
well, thank you, George.
But history.
But history. I made the.
But history. History matters, right? History matters. No, I mean, okay, fine. I'll remove perhaps.
No.
But history matters. And so the history of government agencies isn't particularly positive in terms of being consistent in favor of citizens. Even the American government, for goodness sakes. I mean, no government should be trusted by default. But if you look at Iran since 1979, revolt after revolt, crushing after crushing. I mean, it is a brutal, brutal, brutal regime. And just there, if you don't know anything about Iran and Israel, and Salo, I would ask, I think that would be a good starting question. From what has happened in Iran for 46 years, and then look at what's happened in Israel as a citizen for the same 46 years. I mean, is there really any sensible comparison? I mean, come on. If you don't know anything else, and then make a decision. Which one of those would you rather live in? You've had protest after protest. There's been thousands of people killed by their own government for protesting. The last one was, everybody remembers, I think it was, for goodness sakes, what was her name? Masa Amini. So she's a young woman, the hijab.
Let's talk about it.
Right. So she was arrested by, what's it called, Salo? Is it the Guidance Patrol? She was arrested by the Guidance Patrol in Iran for allegedly violating the hijab law, for wearing her hijab improperly. It's not she wasn't wearing it; she was wearing it improperly. So she was arrested, and there were eyewitnesses. She was arrested. She was beaten. She subsequently collapsed, hospitalized, died 3 days later. People took to the streets. This lasted for a while, for months. At the end of the day, there were 600 people dead. There were 20,000 people arrested.
Dead by whom?
By Iran, by Iran's government.
Public hangings, yeah, because you dared to,
by a brutal, dark age theocratic government. I mean, this is like, oh, it's a one-off. It's not a one-off. We had thousands, at least, maybe a couple thousand, at least 1,500 people that died a few years earlier for this kind of stuff. This isn't, again, it's not a bug, it's a feature. So if you don't know anything about Iran and Israel in terms of culture, step back and say, which one of those would you volunteer to live in? And so if you're going to choose Israel, which I would recommend if you had to choose, then step back and at least be honest and say why. Well, it's because of the way things are done in Israel versus the way things are done in Iran. Well, why is that? Because you got two different governing philosophies. And that's really the crux of the issue here. And so that's our caution about what's happening in New York. Do I think ultimately that Mamdani is going to win? I have my doubts. I think that the vote's going to be split. Andrew Cuomo can run and will run as an independent in the primary as well, even though he was defeated in the
you can't do that in Texas, by the way.
Yeah, it is different.
You have to designate.
It is different. But at the end of the day, is this what we want? Do we want American culture to start looking like this? You don't think the politicians can change American culture, for goodness sakes? You don't think it's going to influence the type of laws that he implements? And so, anyway, I think these are legitimate questions to ask.
Several people want both of you to comment on the Supreme Court decisions, but I wanted to read Joe Lopez's comment, which was funny before, not funny, but ironic. Joe says, every time there's a school shooting, everyone wants to light something, light candles and then hold prayer vigils, but they want to keep the 10 Commandments out of school.
Well, yeah, you're not, you're like, not, well, I mean, yeah, and then they don't mind prayer in
right.
prisons. I mean, it's like, well, let's bring up an ideology that will stop you from going to prison or stop these school shootings and things of this nature. It's not a governmental movement. Those are the people doing prayer vigils. So yeah, but he's right. I mean, look, I think we have a sober look on ideology and what and I would not be opposed, and I think there should be a law against anything other than the Constitution being established in this country.
Amen.
Seriously, I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, there should be no other. This is the United States of America. We have it. It's a constitutional republic. The Constitution prevail. If you cannot swear to protect and defend the Constitution, you cannot serve. Period. End of story. You cannot serve. You can't. If you have some ulterior motive, if there's evidence, I think you can be disqualified from running. You've got to pledge your allegiance to the Constitution. That's just it. I mean, this is not. Now, if you want to change, I guess there's a friendly takeover by giving up your ideas. That's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. Look at Dearborn, Michigan. Look at all these places. I mean, don't look too far. All you got to do is go to Wurzbach Road here in Medical Center. I mean, and again, I there's nothing against the people. It's ideas that for me, there's a culture here in the United States. There's a melting pot. I love the different ethnicities. I'm Lebanese. I'm of Lebanese descent. I mean, so I understand Middle Eastern culture, but they're Catholics. I mean, there's a Maronite Catholic movement, Christian, and then there's Islamic. And so my grandfather, my jiddo, and my family is from the Maronite Catholic Christian side. But still, there's a Middle Eastern culture. The culture should be celebrated. It's the ideas by anybody, whether it's Fidel Castro, or any other ideology that is not going to support the flourishing of Americans. I'm against. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Period. End of story. And if you cannot pledge allegiance to that, you should not be able to put your hand on anything other than the Constitution you don't want to do the Bible, don't do the Bible. That's fine. But you got to put your hand on that Constitution, and you pledge to that at least. You have to. So that's my 2 cents. It's probably worth only 2 cents. Anybody else? What else? Shoot away.
So the Supreme Court decisions.
The Trump versus Casa, universal injunctions, nationwide injunctions. This is that case on forum shopping, essentially. And I really wish it was a 9-0 ruling. I really do. To me, this is one of those issues that should have been a 9-0 ruling, but it was unfortunate, that it was this way. Now here's the counter argument to it. And what really needs to happen is Congress needs to reform the Injunctive Relief Act, because we as conservatives loved when there was a national injunction on Biden for the student debt relief. We liked it when there was a national injunction on when they mandated vaccinations for employment. We liked it when there was an injunction stopping masks on planes. You saw the videos going around, no more masks. People cheered. I mean, so we liked that. Yeah. And that's a legitimate argument. So what I think needs to happen, I think other people agree with this, is Congress needs to once again do your damn job and step in and reform the Injunctive Relief Act. Give some processes in place. Give some guidance. Give some authority. Find out how you do this and not. And so that's that. I think it was a huge win for President Trump. I think you're going to see his agenda, which was, they tried lawfare. They did this. This was a legitimate. It was a what does it call it? A rock in his axle, so to speak, of getting his agenda going forward. So I think it was a big win. But I think it's a big win. Look for a Democrat president in the future. You got to be careful. Be careful of the world you help create, like I always say, because someday you may have to live in it. So, but I think it was a good thing. I just hope Congress steps in now and reforms the Injunctive Relief Act, essentially.
What sort of, if you had to pick one, what sort of change, reform?
We've talked about it before. Panels of judges, expedited process of appeal, things of that nature. I mean, I thought it was interesting. Barrett and Jackson going. Barrett really. She came out swinging, a little cat fight there on the justice on the dais. But she was saying you're afraid of an imperial presidency, but then you're replacing it with an imperial judiciary. I thought that's an important statement. That's legitimate. So you're gonna have this fourth branch, this super branch of government. This is really designating the separation of powers. And so you just have to understand it and understand the function of it. I think that I think that there's a proper use of federal injunctions. Now, how widespread they are, whether they're regional, whether there's a different panel, whether there's a 5-panel judge system, or something where you can debate these ideas and then expedited appellate process to the Supreme Court. I don't know, but I think this was a proper ruling. I'm just saying be careful because we were cheering and supporting the rulings against Biden on those 3 issues that I brought up. So I'm just trying to be objective in my analysis. That's all.
So Trump's solicitor before the court, John Sauer, pointed out that there's been 40 universal injunctions issued against Trump in this term, 35 of them from the same 5 district court judges.
Wow.
And so the question is, do you think there's a pattern here? And so why now? Why this president? And so I think that's really the claim here, that there's been an abuse of that. With regard to universal injunctions, the problem is that while Congress has authorized, and while judges are authorized, I should say, under the injunctive provisions, judges are allowed to issue temporary injunctions, Nico.
Right.
But it should pertain to the parties of the case and not just sort of universal injunctions that bring in parties that have really nothing materially to do with the case at hand. I think that's the gripe here. And so that's why Sauer said this is probably better handled as a class action. These are really class action suits. It shouldn't be brought in under a universal injunction, where you bring in parties that really have nothing to do with the issue at hand. So you've got a district judge in some corner of the country that basically issues a universal injunction that basically freezes the executive across the country. And so the question is legitimate. Where's the authority to do that? And so you're really, I mean, you can literally stop the executive in its tracks. How can you be okay with that? And so that's what Barrett came in and said. It seems to me that Jackson is okay with judicial supremacy, but not so much executive supremacy.
Yeah. Look, I mean,
pick and choose the supremacy you're okay with.
She's taken some lumps from conservatives over some of her rulings and who she sides with on different issues. But this was legit, man. Just like it was good. I mean, I'm glad that she took the lead on this one. She wrote the opinion, and it was interesting. I've never heard of, and I don't do appellate. This is more of a Patrick question of a justice going directly at another justice and basically calling her a dipshit. You know, I mean, she kind of did call her a dipshit. No,
Yes.
No.
Pretty much.
You're a judicial
it's not
dipshit.
unusual, but it's not unusual for the justices to go at a particular argument that another justice has made. But this was it seemed particularly caustic to me, the language. And I mean, of course, I agree with her because I think what she said is true. But it did seem a little more abrasive than usual. I would like to ask Patrick in terms of next steps, because you said, hey, we certainly liked it when a universal injunction was issued in the past for certain issues. And so I'm wondering, I'm just wondering, there's been restraint, Nico. See, that possibility has always been there. There's been restraint until Trump. It seems like even though at any time the train could have gone off the rails, justices wielded restraint. But in the age of Trump, it seems like that restraint's out the window.
Yeah.
And so now I'm worried now that because people won't exercise restraint, now you're going to have a nanny come in.
Yep.
And impose parameters where the solution might be worse than the problem. See, I worry about that. I just do. It's like, while I'm happy about the ruling because there's been abuse, now what? And this is to say nothing about the fact that the birthright citizenship question wasn't even addressed, and they specifically said they weren't going to address the birthright citizenship question, even though some of the appellate rulings had gone after the clear unconstitutionality of the birthright of Trump's order against birthright citizenship. But this does leave. I mean, the court could have come down and sided against Trump on birthright citizenship. They could have done that here because it was obviously at the heart of the case. But they chose not to.
That's what I was wondering about.
So this leaves, I mean, I don't think silence is everything, but I don't think silence is nothing either. So I wonder about that too. I wonder if this is going to go the way of Roe, because I think the legal precedent behind it is rather shaky. So I think that's another possibility here. But boy, does the Trump administration have so much more leeway now to actually, do what it was elected to do. But I do want to know, I'd love Patrick to answer the question. Well, now what? I mean, if Congress gets involved, I mean, the approval rating of Congress is in the basement, Nico, for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Congress is relatively incompetent and ineffective, and we're putting it in their hands. God help us. So on something of this consequential.
Well, we put it in their hands because we put it in their hands because people vote these people in. I mean, what are you going to do?
Well, I'm
So
not
it's just
asking Congress. I'm asking Patrick. I'm curious to
Oh.
see what Patrick would
Oh.
say. If he was a legislator, what would you recommend? I mean, because does a judge not have the authority to issue a universal injunction, or are there very particular rules where universal injunctions and should those be defined in legislation? Is that what Patrick
I don't
would
think
suggest?
I think that wasn't the legislative intent of the Injunctive Relief Act. So it just needs to be clarification.
Yeah.
I mean, one judge, you can forum shop to one judge. I mean, think about that. That's a mess. And then you can stop the agenda of a president and an administration.
Yes.
That's not the
No.
legislative intent. Any speed questions? Any questions? If nobody wants to talk about anything juicy, no questions at all. No comments.
the-
Antonio, you didn't hang on with us.
I don't think so.
An important ruling concerning Planned Parenthood. That states can refuse to pay or to give money to taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood through Medicaid. And so I think it was the governor of South Carolina who issued an executive order putting a stop to that. And you had Democrats weep and gnash their teeth and say that's completely unacceptable. They got to get their money. The Supreme Court said, I don't think so. I don't think so. Not exactly. So that's a huge win. People need to know that the budget, that the amount of taxpayer dollars going to Planned Parenthood every year is astronomical. I mean, it's at least $500 million. And so I don't know. I think this is probably a huge step in the right direction. So may it continue.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No.
Salo,
Nope.
anything? No, we're good. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in with us. Please share this with people that you think would benefit from these conversations. Give your comments. We'll try to look at those comments the best we can and respond if we can. And those of you and business owners too, we're always looking for sponsorships. I mean, this is a big endeavor. It's a huge sacrifice for us, which we're happy to do. But we really like to grow our footprint, so to speak. Salo's done a wonderful job, so we're glad he's on board. But obviously, all this stuff and the way the cameras and this and the spreading and the social media stuff, it's not my wheelhouse. But it's
And we want
people like
Salo to keep doing his wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Salo's S180, right, Salo? I mean, exceptionally gifted and capable. And so we want to cut Salo loose. How's that? It takes money to do that. This stuff doesn't miraculously appear. So we want to broaden the show, increase our footprint. If you like what you hear here, then consider supporting us. Again, sidebartv.com.
Correct.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Is that the best way? Go down to the bottom. And
But we have for sponsorships for businesses, like
That's
a
right, please.
recurring
Yeah.
sponsorship that will give you whatever credit,
that's right.
and whatever sponsorship support entails. That's a Karen question, but that's all, guys. That's my pitch. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your families. Bye-bye.